studio here in North Minneapolis. I'm Lacy Johnson, and this is this week's episode of Bright Lights, where we bring to you achievers in all areas of human endeavors, where we have focus on business and education and just ideas of people. And we like to bring you all kinds of diverse ideas from all kinds of diverse people. And that's one of our goals. As I said, we tend not to want to censor anybody, as it's the fashion today. Yeah, it's another blessed day in the neighborhood. I want to wish everyone a happy New Year's, as is my uh, habit of doing. Just to give you a few highlights from the previous week. Went to a basketball tournament, and that was pretty good. Was planning on going to the Alcorn State game against the Gophers, Minnesota Gopher basketball team, and that was canceled due to some COVID concerns, and I was somewhat disappointed by that. Even though the crowd that we was going, there was about 20 of us, we decided to get together anyway, and it actually turned into a great holiday festivity, and so I enjoyed that. And so the basketball game, I'm hoping to uh, get to another Gopher game with the group of people that we were planning on for Alcorn State. And as I was explaining to you, Alcorn State is an HBCU located in Lorman, Mississippi, about 40 miles from my hometown, and it's part of my childhood memories. We used to play. I played for first trombone in my high school band, so we used to go up there and play for their homecoming every year. Those were some great moments. So my wife, once again, she cooked dinner for the holidays ever since my our grandson has been born. She never missed a holiday meal, and I really appreciate that in her because one of our major responsibilities, I think, as parents, is to create positive memories for our children. And just these holiday dinners, I think, is creating positive memories for my grandson. Of course, being Southerners, well, there's a Southern tradition to have black-eyed peas every New Year's, and I guess that's supposed to set you up for some good things in the year ahead. So my wife cooked some black-eyed peas, and we had that, and just had a great time with the family. Now, today, I'm excited to have as my guest Sia Lo. Sia is a prominent member of the Hmong community here in Minnesota, and I've been having some very good Hmong friends and been invited to a lot of Hmong celebration for the past 20 or 30 years. And I've said it to them, and I'll say it to you. They have one of the best spirits I've ever met from a group of people, man. I just love being around them. They're friendly and welcoming, and just always got a good spirit about them. And so I'm very happy to consider Shia as a friend and acquaintance of mine, and all the other people that we know in the Hmong community, and going to their Valentine celebrations and all their festivities and their restaurants and things like that. So I feel like I'm an official Hmong. But what we're going to focus on today is we'll delve into a little history. We'll talk about the Hmong's journey to America and what they're contributing here and their experiences and things like that. And we'll get into a lot of other things with the Hmong culture and things like that. So, but before we do that, we'll probably get into some things about Shia and his history and his family. So, without further ado, I'd like to welcome one of the local Hmong leaders here, Mr. Sia Lo. Hey, Shia, welcome to Bright Lights.
Lacy, thank you for having me and to Bright Lights. I know you're doing great things, and we're sharing ideas and reaching out to people and learning. So, thank you for having me, and more than happy to tell everyone a little bit about myself and how the Hmong got here and our contribution and what we need to do.
Okay, well, let's start with a little history lesson here. I say often to people, by the time you get
Yeah,
to my age, a lot of history, you lived it, and it's not something you read in a textbook or anything. And I
yeah,
happen to live during the Vietnam War era and the whole Indochina and that war. And I do know, just to let our audience know, that back in the early '60s, it actually started long
Mhm.
before that, but the real conflict and heavy involvement of the U.S. The United States was started probably in the '60s. We ended up having over 50,000 young Americans killed in that war, and it was basically a kind of like a fight against communism and China, which I tell everybody, when we grew up, they were called Red China. It's just interesting to see how things evolve over time. But anyway, there was some things going on in the Vietnam War. The Ho Chi Minh Trail, I think, ran through Laos and things like that. But the bottom line is that there were people in Laos who was recruited, I think, mainly by the CIA, and I'll let Shia fill that in. But for those of you who are not familiar with the Vietnam War, I recommend that you just know history and go out and read up on it, and you'll fill in some of the blank spaces that crop up during Shia's conversation. So, Shia, just give us a little history on the Hmong involvement in the Vietnam conflict and how all that ended up and how it eventually led to a lot of the Hmongs relocating to the United States.
And so, Lacy, from what I know, I was only 10 years old when we arrived in the US. So I was 7 years old when we left the country. I still remember a lot of things, but I learned a lot as to what happened to the Hmong and how we got into the war. From a little bit from my father, and then of course learning from many of the veterans who are actually here in this country, including General Counsel, about our involvement. But basically, the United States signed an agreement with the United Nations not to send troops into Laos during the Vietnam War, and Laos was going to be remain neutral. And so the North Vietnamese used Laos to carry their supplies to destroy the American and the South Vietnamese. The United States needed an army within Laos to counter what the communists were doing. Clearly, what the communists was doing, the North communists in Vietnam, was in violation of that agreement, but they were doing it anyway. So they're using Laos as a neutral country to carry their military supplies to kill all the Americans in the South. And so the United States came out with a plan on how they're going to disrupt that supply and also engage the North communists so that they would not go to the South to destroy the American forces and what they're trying to do in Vietnam. And as a result of that, the American engaged Hmong community in Laos. Back then, we were hunter and gatherers. My father told me, and based on all the Hmong leaders that I've talked to as well, before the American came over, we know how to manufacture our own gun. We know how to manufacture our own powder. And as a little boy, following my father around, I saw how my dad manufactured the gun and the gunpowder, collecting bats' feces as nitrogen, we call it this country. We didn't know anything about nitrogen back in Laos, but we know that by using bat feces, that we could, create explosion. And so my father already knew how to do that. Many of the Hmong knew how to do that. We're great hunters and shooter. And when American came over and recruited us to fight for the United States, we took on machine guns. So if we could shoot fairly well with ancient weapons that we're already shooting, imagine what we can actually do if you give us a machine gun. And we did tremendous damage to the North Vietnamese communists. And we fought the North Vietnamese communists to 15 years standing still, which means that we did not give grounds at all with minimal US support from the CIA. We did that work. And as a result, we occupied thousands of North Vietnamese communist soldiers that could have gone south and done more damage to the US forces. Now, according to the CIA statements and documentation, if it wasn't for the Hmong, the United States memorial for the Vietnam in DC would be twice as big, twice as long, because the Hmong actually occupied and fought and engaged the North Vietnamese and attacked the trail. The Hmong prevented many deaths that the U.S. Military would have suffered if it without the Hmong. But as a result, we paid a heavy price, and the communists came after us. Um, we lost about 30% of our population in this effort to defend the United States and freedom in Laos. And because of that contribution, we were allowed to immigrate into the United States as refugees.
Okay, you mentioned earlier that you left Laos, I think at the age of 7, and then you mentioned the age of 10 getting to the United States.
Yes.
Fill in those 3 years for me,
Yeah.
Sia.
So because my dad was an advisor to the Central Intelligence and to General Vang Pao, my dad was a marked target. In other words, they specifically sought him out to arrest him and to send him to re-education camp that we probably would not survive. So we left when I was 7 years old, and we crossed the Mekong River on a canoe under military control. And so they were going to shoot at us, and then we crossed the middle of the river. So once you cross the center line, they won't shoot at you, but we can hear the military putting their guns and these big guns that they put together, and it makes a lot of noise, and you can clearly hear that as they were prepared to shoot us. And so we fled to Thailand, crossing the Mekong River when I was 7 years old, and we stayed at the refugee camp for at least two years before we could immigrate into the U.S. as as refugees. And now most people do not understand that when the Hmong came over, we have to go through an interview where the CIA and the State Department will come and interview us to make sure that we actually fought for the United States before we would qualify to immigrate to the United States as refugees. Unlike many refugees that enter the United States now, they do not have to go through that screening process, but we did. And so we were there detained at the refugee camp in Thailand, go through the screening process, and then searching for um, a sponsor in the United States that is willing to sponsor our family into the U.S. And that's why it took a while for all of that to come together in order for my family and many Hmong families, in fact, all Hmong families, to eventually immigrate into the U.S.
Now, I understand from previous conversation that you first came to Chicago, I think, and then eventually you ended up in Minneapolis. How was your experience in Chicago? I'm assuming you had a sponsoring family there, but how was that experience before you moved to
Yeah,
Minneapolis?
I went to I did my undergrad at North Park University in Chicago. But you're correct. We did come to Chicago on our way to our sponsors, and there are 6 different church denominations that came together to sponsor my family. It's super unique. I go to a different church every Sunday because 6 of them sponsor us. So every denomination saying it a little bit differently, but everyone reads the same Bible, and everybody talks about the Lord Jesus. But anyway, um, um, with Chicago, we landed um, in New York. From New York, they sent us to Chicago. We stay at a hotel in Chicago, and we're going to need an episode just to talk about that incident in Chicago. But
Okay.
from Chicago, we went to Eau Claire, and that's where the 6 churches that welcomed us into our new
Oh, okay.
home. It was actually Pepin, Wisconsin, only an hour away from the Twin Cities, that eventually resettled. We came to Pepin in June of '76, and then we moved to St. Paul in about the summer of '78. We moved to the Twin Cities.
Okay. So since you arrived in the U.S. at 10 years old, I'm assuming between the age of 10 and somewhere along the line, Not only did you get your undergrad degree, you went to William and Mitchell, I think, and got your law degree, but along the way, you met your wife, and now you have a family. And so
Mm.
tell us a little bit about your current family.
Yeah,
Share.
yeah. So what? The Lord works in mysterious ways. So I grew up in the Twin Cities. You know, we moved to St. Paul in '78, and so I went to elementary school, junior high, high school here, and then I went to North Park University. And after undergrad, I did my medical technology down there as well. And then I moved up here to back to Minnesota to be with my family, and I attended Hamline University Law School. And after that, I met my wife, and she's Hmong, but she's from French Guiana in South America. Because
Mhm.
when the Hmong immigrated out of Thailand as refugees, they also immigrated into France. And so she went down to French Guiana, and then I came to the US. And then we eventually met when she came up here to visit her family. And we got married. And now we have four beautiful children that are all pretty much grown up now. The youngest, she's still in high school. She's 15, and a handful for the block, of course. But anyway,
Right
that's who
on,
we are. And
teenagers.
we're a typical American family. We live in White Bear Lake. You know, four children. I've got four dogs, a turtle, a fish, and a tank full of fish. So,
Now, earlier you mentioned your father, and tell us about how it was growing up and the influence of your father and your elders, and
yeah.
what was it about that childhood that gave you the motivation and desire, and I always say tenacity, to pursue a degree here and to go on to be a lawyer. uh, Tell me
Yeah.
about your family growing up.
Sure. I do want to share this story, and this is somewhat also a miracle that I end up here in the U.S. But I want everyone listening to know that my father was picked by God even before we became Christians. In his vision, right before the United States came into Laos, three angels visited him, and he told this story repeatedly to all of us until he passed about some 14 years ago. But my father was visited by these three angels, and they specifically instructed my father to go and clear a field large enough for a plane helicopter to land on. And once he cleared the field, he's supposed to put up a pole and put a white cloth on it. And he said, Why do you want me to do this?" And they said, "The most powerful nation on earth is going to land there. Just trust us. You've been picked. You must go and do this. And when you wake up, you must go." And so when he woke up from that dream or that trend, he told my mom, he said, "We got to go and clear these fields because the most powerful nation is going to land on this a piece of land that we're going to clear, so that it's just super dense jungle. Plane couldn't land on it." So my mom, my dad, and he took all these relative, um, um, went out there and cleared the field. And sure enough, they put a pole in the middle. He put a white cloth on it as he was instructed by the angels. And a week later, the American helicopter land on that field. And because of that relationship, the American developed their relationship with my father, and my father, and then helped General Vang Pao, the legendary general that led the Hmong forces for 15 years against the North Communist Vietnamese, General Vang Pao. And so these are the uh, giants that moved me, that shaped me. There was an American advisor for U.S. aid. As his name is Pop Bill. We call him Pop, and he's a farmer from Indiana. He came over as a volunteer with the U.S. aid and met my father. And started working with my father. And so one of the things that they end up doing, what the United States wanted to do, was to feed all of the families, um, that the men has to go and fight in the war for the United States, right? And as a result, they lose their lives. And what are we going to do with the family? How are we going to feed the family? Well, my dad end up caring for all these families and working with USAID and Pop Bill to feed them and to house them and to raise animals. And I grew up on a farm where the United States sends in animals for us to raise, and then we distribute a pair of chicken, a pair of pigs, ducks to all the refugees that were fleeing from the war inside of Laos. But these people like my father, General Vang Pao, Pop Bills, they're the one that influenced me the most. And then of course, coming over here and learning about the church. Here's what's unique about the church and what really moved me to become a Christian is not so much about the religion of Christianity, but is about the love of the church and the act of the church that caused me to become a Christian. And I was moved by a group of Americans, a six different group of churches that would come together and took care of a refugee family that they knew nothing about. They doesn't know how to speak English. That they have to teach us, to feed us like a bunch of children. There was 11 of us. They took us to the hospital. They took us to the clinic. They fed us. They clothed us, and they helped us. And they put us in school. And they're showing me pictures of animals and teach me word by word on how to speak English. And
Oh,
I mean, so I grew up in the church and knowing that these are people that loved us, and that I started asking the question: why would a group of Caucasian or European descendant um, took care of a Hmong family from Southeast Asia and welcomed them into their home and took care of them, took the time to feed them, clothe them, and educate them, and make sure that they become productive U.S. citizens. Why would they do that? What force allowed them to do that? And I learned eventually that it was the Bible and the religion and the instruction in the Bible that God told them that, by their love, that they are Christians, and that's how the world would know. And so that's my first personal story about the church, and that how the church influenced me as well. And so, one of the questions that we want to share, you asked me to share as to why I become a public servant. So why do I want to serve? Well, you know, God gave my family a lot, and He picked my family and picked my father. I feel as though everything that I'm doing, I need to give back to what God has given me, and so I'm just sharing the blessings that He's given me in everything that I do. Every day is about how I can return what God has given me to all of the people that I touch.
yeah, it's the parable of the talents. What's going to be your return on his investment?
Yeah,
You have mentioned General Vang Pao, and once again, being familiar with the Hmong community, I know the reverence that he holds in that community. I do know at one time he was like the leader of the Hmong community here in the United States, and he lived in St. Paul. I remember reading an article about his passing. But why don't you give us a feel for the importance and reverence of General Vang Pao, who
yeah,
helped lead you over in Laos?
yeah. So, like every great leader, they leave their legacy in our hearts instead of a statute, right? General Vang
Hmm.
Pao was one of those exceptional leaders, like Martin Luther King, John F. Kennedy Jr., right?
Hmm.
Abraham Lincoln, George Washington, uh, Elvis Presley, Michael Jackson. These are exceptional human beings that God gave to us. General Vang Pao was one of those, and the general was picked to lead the Hmong forces. Um, and he suffered a lot, and he learned a lot, and he's also gone through a lot. But it was because of his leadership and his um, unwillingness to surrender, unwillingness to give up, always believing that tomorrow will be a better day, will be a brighter day that God is going to give us, or the ancestors are going to give us. And so it was always the general painting the way, how to win the wars, to protect his people, how to take his people into a different country, how to set up nonprofits like Lao Family and a nonprofit organization to help educate his people, to get them to work and to become productive citizens. That was very important for General Vang Pao, that we do not forget where we came from, that we are loyal to the United States all the way to the very end and into the future. And so many Hmong young people now join the US military trying to carry that legacy. He talks about the importance of education, that if you're not educated, you're not going to be able to help yourself, you can't help your people, you can't help other people, you cannot help the United States, you can't be productive. So education was critical. He pushed for that. He pushed for unity, and he formed the Hmong Council so that the Hmong community can unite and speak one voice. We can't have too many chief and no Indians, right?
Right.
So he understands that. He said, we got to form chiefs, and so that we can move the 18 families, and he did that as well. But the general has done a lot. But if it one things that I would point out to what he has done was that he convey um, the character of never surrender, the character of I will do what is necessary to be free, and that I will do whatever is necessary to make sure that America remain free. Those were very deep messages that he convey. He doesn't come out and actually preach every day, but it's what he does, and he's a man of action. He doesn't talk. He gets it done when it really matters. General Vang Pao showed up, and so when General Vang Pao passed in California, the funeral was 7 days and 7 nights, and most American probably do not did not understand or saw or witnessed that, but I was there, and we there were so many Hmong that gathered in Fresno for the funeral that we purchased all the cows. I mean, we bought all the cows in Fresno to butcher and eat for the funeral. I mean, and people talked about that, but the generals loved, and his legacy brought the Hmong community together. It was really his love for his people that caused them to come back and pay their respect. And so it is one of the most well attended funerals of any Hmong person that I've seen.
Well, I've had a chance to meet his son, and I just see the reverence that he's well deserved reverence he's held in the Hmong community. Now, you mentioned your dad's vision and creating the helicopter pad. You mentioned the fact that you lost 30% of your population during the Vietnam War, fighting against communists and Ho Chi Minh. You mentioned your trip as a refugee over here. So, how is it that going through all that, experiencing everything you experienced, that you still had the, shall we say, umph to say, I'm going to be a lawyer? In fact, before you answer that, what made you decide to be a lawyer, and what gave you the umph to go ahead and achieve that goal?
So I know how much the Hmong community suffered, and we didn't know anything about the world then. We only knew that Laos exists. We were out in the jungle. We met the Americans. They preached freedom. They're serious. They gave us the weapon to defend ourselves, to be free and not to be controlled by the communists. And so that's what I grew up with. And so when I came into America, I want to know, what is it that made America the most powerful nation on earth? It's the laws that governs his country. And so I have to learn that. I want to understand what it takes for America to be the most powerful nation, the three branches of government, our constitution, how all that interact comes together to create the most powerful nation on earth, where every person in American has an opportunity to achieve the American dream, and that's only possible because the laws of this country. And that's why I decided to go to law school. Aside from that, my brothers, we were all trying to go to medical school, and two of them did go to medical school, and I figured they're going to get sued. And so they're going to need all the help they can get. So, as their brother, I better go and learn how to protect them as well. But kidding aside, the biggest issue was really wanting to understand the laws of this country, and become an attorney, and learning the laws, and be using the law and practicing law for almost more than 20 years now. I, I I I really understand it much better if I did not go to law school. So I'm very thankful that I became an attorney, and now I'm able to read and interpret the law, and to make sure that people apply the law correctly. That's what I do every day, is to make sure that the law are applied correctly, and that my clients are protected. And so that we can maintain the freedom, and security and peace of this country.
Yeah, you met my wife, and in her previous job, she worked with a lot of immigrants, and ironically, they generally knew more about the Constitution and laws than my American friends, ironically. And keep reading somewhere where the majority of America can't pass the basic immigration test. They've taken civics out of the classroom, and they don't
Mhm.
history anymore. So that's just one of my pet peeves. Well, okay, so it motivated you to become a lawyer. And how are you enjoying your practice right now? And how are things going as a lawyer? And by the way, uh, I have to put this in, because it's my show, and I can put in personal comments.
Right.
Uh, just the fees your lawyers charge, man. When are we gonna? We need a law for your lawyers, man, to lower your fees, because that'll bankrupt most people. But anyway, how's the legal business been going for you? Challenges, you enjoy? I know you enjoy just helping people who need services, and I kind of sense, knowing you a little bit, that you're not one of those high end, expensive and lawyers who's you have to mortgage your home for a retainer. So how's the field of law practice been going for you, Shia?
Yeah, it's very rewarding. Every day that I get up, I I feel good, helping every client, making sure that they are going where they need to go, and they're protected, and that the cases are moving forward. Um, and so I enjoy that. I feel like maybe this is really my calling. Um, Now, with regards to fees, I look at their ability to earn and how much they have, and I try to explain to them that um, you treasure what you pay for, and if it's important,
Hmm.
and if you don't pay for it, you don't respect it. You don't respect lawyers. I have the opposite. Now, big corporate lawyers, they get paid a lot of money, but most lawyers that are out there working and helping everyone, they're just like everybody else. They make ends meet, and yeah,
Yeah,
you charge a lot, but that doesn't mean that you get tons of clients through the door. And
right.
so I want to encourage people to also pat lawyers on the back. We get the shaft all the time, but people don't like lawyer until they need a good one, right? And
Yeah.
so lawyers are necessary to keep our freedom, and to protect America, and to protect our justice system. And so with the fees, I always say, and the most satisfied clients are the one that actually pay the bills. The one
Right.
that are always not happy is the one that is not willing to pay and just want to get it for free. And that's not right either, because I always tell clients that doesn't want to pay, you mind coming over and I mean, cut my grass for me, and pay my
Right.
bills. That'd be very helpful. I help you, so maybe the mortgage company would forgive me for a month. They don't take that into consideration, Lacy. So
I
that's
just
why it's the way it is, right? I
right,
mean,
right.
unfortunately, I wish we could do for free. And there's such thing, and we have be a public defenders that does things for free. But the state pays for that, and so I'm not sure what the answer is on how to lower the fees. But if you think we charge a lot of money, people don't understand how much other professions are charging. Okay, so
Uh-huh.
I looked at the guy that comes and picked up my trash, and I'm like, holy cow, I mean, why did I go to law school and take out all these loans, right?
Right.
A guy wanted, I put a bathroom in the basement. I'm like, really? I mean,
Yeah.
so why do you think
Contractors too.
so? That's right. I got a bone to pick with everybody else as well. So I think the market will, free economy, the market will fare it out. We always tell people that we charge based on the market rate
Demand,
and
supply and demand, huh?
supply and demand.
So,
And then, yeah,
uh well, if there's anyone who can make me reconsider my opinion on legal fees, is you, Shia. So I'm
well, thank you,
take into
Lacy.
consideration what you just said. Okay, let's talk a little bit about the Hmong culture,
Sure,
and let's start with the General Powell and his reference. But you mentioned the Hmong Council, and I know
sure.
there's a couple of levels of that, and explain all that to us, because and I know we'll talk about it a little bit later, the generation, because you're probably transitioning too from your old culture to incorporate some new things into your culture. But let's talk about the role of the different types of councils and their roles, and specifically somewhere down the road. One thing I like about it is that you keep a lot of issues within the community, and
Right.
you can solve them within the community. And I really respect that about your culture. So touch on the Hmong Council, and I know
Yep.
there's different levels and what they do and how they fit into the community.
Yep. So, like every race, every country, you have your own sets of rules and how you're going to interact with each other, right? So,
Mhm.
how the Hmong are married, how they pay their dowry, if they get into fights, how do you resolve those conflicts? Make sure that they don't end up killing each other. If you offend somebody purposely or by accident, how are you going to resolve those conflicts? You fight over land, how does the Hmong resolve those conflicts? So the Hmong are made out of 18 families. Okay, so I'm a Lo, so I can't marry. How we determine a family is a Lo cannot marry another Lo's if you're Hmong. Okay, if you're Afro American and you're Lo, fair game. Okay,
Mhm,
but if
mhm.
you're Hmong and you're Lo, I cannot marry you, and so the same family cannot marry each other. So we have 18 families. You got the Lows and the Lees and the Vang and the Yang and the Tao and the Mua and so on. There's only 18 families. Every Hmong in the U.S. and around the world, but especially here in the U.S., belong to the 18 families. Now, General Vang Pao has a vision to bring the family together, that each family would elect a representative. Okay, it's an elected position. Each family elected representative to serve on the Hmong Council of 18. So the Hmong Council is made of 18 representatives, each from the family, just like the way we elect leaders here in this country. We got 50 families, right? Minnesota is one of those 50 families, and we elect a representative to come sit together to represent Minnesota. Same idea with the Hmong Council, that the Lo representative represent the Lows, the Lee represent the Lees. They would all come together and talk about problems and how to solve problems and how to connect with the Americans and how to connect with other groups and race that are in this country. That is the purpose of the Hmong Council, is to resolve Hmong conflict and to connect with all of the American different families or American leaders in this country.
So, given that, uh, one would tend to assume that you don't get law enforcement involved as often as a lot of other cultures and communities, because you're solving those issues among yourself. Am I correct to assume that, Shia?
To a point.
Okay.
Now, no one is above the law. The Hmong resolve their conflict, and they must operate within the law of this country. So, no witness tampering, for example, allowed. And I was a lawyer for the Hmong Council for 18 years or so, And my role was to make sure that the Hmong Council does not violate American laws while protecting and resolving Hmong conflicts. So there's a way to do that. And one of the reasons why we developed the Hmong cultural mediation program was to allow the Hmong to use their culture to mediate and to come to a conclusion that it's a win-win situation for both parties. And so um, that was the work, and making sure that the work that I've done for a very long time, and making sure that the Hmong Council does not violate American laws. We do not want what we do would violate American laws, right? So we
Hmm.
can't say you kill a non-Hmong person and we're just going to resolve this culturally. That's not
Hmm.
acceptable,
Right,
right?
right,
Because once you killed someone, you not only have to answer to the family of the deceased, but that you have to answer to the law of this country that prevents killing of anyone.
right.
Same thing with domestic assault. Yeah.
Okay, so the Hmong came to America with a lot of reverence and deference, etc., to the elders, and you get into a situation where now the younger people generation who can speak English, they're kind of empowered and things like that. And just as in most communities, uh, the next generation, they're different from us. And I'm assuming that that caused some issue. But let's talk about the whole issue of the evolution of the elders and their role in the community. Is it lessening, and are there
Okay.
any concerns about that? As I mean, a lot of our kids are being raised by the internet
Yeah.
and public schools and everything else, and the influence of the wisdom of elders is really being diluted. So speak to that
Right.
for
Yep.
a minute,
So yeah, I
if
mean,
you don't mind.
we in America we use the word elder all the time. Yeah, you are the elders. Am I? When do you become an elder and stuff? But I think most people understand that an elder is someone who is seasoned, experienced, like a chief. And so there's a lot of elders in this country called judges and elected politicians like yeah, Elder Bidens and Trump
Mhm.
and everyone else. But um, the elders plays a critical role because they have the experience to lead. That's how the Hmong people sees it, and so you have many young Hmong now growing up in this country, and eventually they will become elders, right?
Mhm.
Because they are the one that has the knowledge and experience in this country as well as Laos to become the elders and to influence and to move the community forward in the right direction, prosper direction, not in the direction that's going to be destructive, that lead to violence and destruction and unsuccessful. So the elders of the young people coming to this country, they're saying, well, I'm an elder already, right? I'm
Mhm.
a doctor, I'm a lawyer. Why
Mhm.
am I leading my people? And the answer is this: you must win the hearts of the people by your action and the decision that you make. You don't automatically become an elder just because of age. You become an elder based on the good decisions that you make, demonstrated decision that you make. Like you, Lacy, for example, you are an elder in your community and respected by the Afro American community, not because of your age, but because of the decision that you made and how successful you are. And even if it's not successful, how right, how just those decisions that you've made. That's why people respect you. So it's not age alone, it is by experience. And I believe that the elders that's going to lead the Hmong community into the future is going to be those leaders that has the experience, the knowledge, and the proven decision making that is going to lead the community to a more prosperous future. Those are being the leader that's going to win out in the end. I think the majority of the Hmong community is going to support those leaders.
Yeah. Those who listen to my podcast weekly probably remember all the times I talk about my elders and the experience and just wisdom. I mean, just you understand.
Right.
you learn to respect the difference between wisdom and knowledge and education. I mean,
Yeah,
they're just not the same. So I appreciate that. In fact,
yeah,
there's a lot of things that the
yeah,
Black community and culture has in common with the Hmong
yeah.
culture that I've come to appreciate.
Yeah,
So,
I
mhm,
wanna jump in this really important point, and it
okay.
talks about leadership and elders, and I want to make sure that the audience understands this a little bit better on how the Hmong, um, pick their leaders. Okay,
Hmm.
so you know, if you become a leader, Lacy, of any group, and when you become that leader, everybody fights every day, you're probably not that good. That's what the elders would say,
Hmm.
right? They
Right.
say, well, these people don't listen to me. I'm the leader. I'm the elder, and nobody listens to me. Well, maybe you do not know how to lead. That is why people do not follow you. Because if you are a good leader and you do what is best for people and you do what is just, the people will follow you. And if you love people and you win their hearts and their mind and their trust, then you become the leader. And that's what the Hmong people determine this day in our community. Lots of people claiming to be elders and leaders, but only a few. And General Vang Pao is definitely an example of that. And to me, my father is definitely an example of that, because there will be many people, elders in a room. It is what my father say, what General Vang Pao say, that ultimately, moved our community to a much more prosperous place. And so that's how we are determining who is going to lead in the Hmong community for tomorrow.
Yeah, and once again, sticking to your culture, you mentioned about the marriages, and you can't marry anyone from your particular is a tribe or clan. Shia, I don't want to use the wrong term here,
Yeah,
but uh, I think I read somewhere, and I don't know how long ago this was, but I tend to read gratuitous stuff. That the divorce rate among monks was like 11%. I don't know how long ago that was. Have you seen the influence of the Western world get that divorce rate to rise, and it's harder for families to stay together because of these influences?
yeah.
How has that impacted marriages and family life here? Just the Western influence.
The Hmong are like any other group in the U.S. or in the world. The stress of taking care of your family, and that leads to a lot of hardship and family breaking up, and just the stress that I can't stress enough about the stress
Yeah,
that the
yeah,
people are going through in this country.
yeah.
Although it's a free country, it's very stressful having to
Hmm.
get up every day at the same time doing this, feeding the family year after year, day after day. I
Yeah.
think people are amazing for being able to do what they do to keep the family together. But the stress and the strain and all of the ideas that are influencing and stealing, like computers stealing the minds and hearts of our young people today. Okay,
Hmm.
they
Hmm.
don't talk to their parents anymore; they rather talk to a computer, and those type of stress and strain enter into the Hmong community just like everyone else. And so we are seeing tremendous conflict. That's why the Hmong Council created the Hmong Mediation program, and we want to maintain our new year and our culture to let people know, don't lose who you are in America. You need to remember who you are and then become a part of America. Remember that good will overcome evil no matter what and when. And so America is really impacting the Hmong community. But the Hmong community is a very, I say, quick learning community as well. All right.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
we learn how destructive, and we also come up with solution very quickly on how we can prevent it, prevent our family from being destroyed. So when I take you and we go out and meet, with different groups and different family and gathering, that connection and that time that we spend together keeps the family together. It
Yeah.
reminds us of who we are, because it's so easy to lose yourself in America,
Yeah.
because who are you, what am I, But if you surround yourself with people that loves you, right,
Mhm.
your chance of success is going to be much better. And so uh, to
Yeah.
answer your question, it's impacting the Hmong community, and it's very hard, but we're trying our very best to keep our family together.
Well, if you're like most communities, you got young people, they won't answer your call, but if you text them, they'll text you back right away.
Correct.
And my and I feel blessed. Some of my most memorable time was just sitting down on the porch talking to my elders.
Yeah.
And it's a sad thing that we've lost nowadays. As a matter of fact, one of my pet peeves is to take me a video camera and a camera crew and just go down south and talk to all these elderly people out there that has so much wisdom that's going to be lost forever and this generation. So let's shift gears a little bit here,
Yeah.
Shia. Let's talk about you mentioned that you were kind of like an agricultural community in Laos, and I know you do a lot of farming and hunting. And Minnesota is one of the reasons I guess they kind of like living here. But tell us about your cultural background in hunting and farming and
Yeah.
how that has migrated with you to America.
Yep. So among hunter and gatherers, and one of the things that we do, in comparison to what we do over this country, is nothing, because in Laos, and in order for you to clear a rice field, you need to go and chop down a jungle. Okay, I mean, you look at Hmong jungle, we need to chop that up, and then we let it dry, and then we burn it, and then once we burn it, we clear it, and then we plant our rice on these super steep hills, okay, because we don't have any flat land to live on, so we grow our rice and vegetables and everything on a hillside. So remember, we behave almost like goats, I mean. And then then you gotta keep the weeds off of all these plants as well, right? So you work
Mhm.
year round. Okay. And then if you once you're done planting and you're clearing your crop, then you got to go to the forest and get some wild game to feed your family, or you got to raise your animals. And so we're farmers, gatherers, hunters, um, and have to work very hard every day, rise very early before the sun comes up because it's too hot in the afternoon to work, and stay up very late, and get the most sunlight out so that we could prepare all that we have grown and harvest. And so that's how the Hmong used to be, the things they used to do. So when we come to this country, we no longer have to clear a forest. That's good, because
Mhm.
people get hurt chopping. When you go and clear that forest, you get poked and cut, and tree falling on you and branches falling on you. It's very dangerous. And so when you talk about the Hmong come over here, and all I do is I stand at McDonald's, put a nice hat on, and say, "Hello, sir. How can I help you today?" Well, how would and then you would put the food out there. You give them the thing, and then people pay you. And to the Hmong, they're like, "Man, this is the easiest thing there is." You stand
Mhm.
on an assembly line, you put this bottle together for hours, and then they pay you. That beats chopping up the jungle and trying to burn it, without getting
Mhm.
burned yourself. So that's kind of where the Hmong came from, and it was a very hard place to survive and work. And so we came with that hard working ethics already, that discipline. And so we came to this country. We used that. We applied that in this country. Going to school isn't as hard as chopping up. But my dad always kid with me. He goes, Shia, if you and your brothers do not go to school, and all you need to do is read and write, and that's so easy. I'm going to take you back, and we can go and chop up some more jungles, He did the heck out of me when I was little, and I said, "No, no, no, Dad, I go to school. I'll do better. I get better grades. I promise you." He
Now the
goes,
real
"Better."
motivation comes
Yeah,
come
he
through
goes,
here.
"You do better, because you know what? Remember that jungle that we used to chop it down? Yeah, we're gonna go back and do that if you guys don't shape up." So we get really good grades growing up, and then before you know it, we all went through and passed and did well. So Yeah,
Okay.
that worked.
So, just out of curiosity, what would you say to the American that's working at McDonald's and complaining about how hard they got to work and how low the pay is and how
Okay.
unfair
Yep.
it is?
Yep.
What would be your message to someone like that?
Yeah. If I
Give a.
could, if I
Mhm,
could, one of the things that our educational need to do is to take our children, especially the one that doesn't want to work hard, and bring him into a third world country and just
mhm,
let him sit there for a month. You know,
mhm,
I mean, he
mhm.
doesn't have to jog the jungle. Just let him go out there and try that for a month because that's going to be great way to for them to actually see it. So among children who does not do well and doesn't want to go to school and do well in this country, the Hmong parents will actually get a plane ticket and take those kids back into Laos, into other country like Thailand. And then when they see everything, they come back. You don't have to tell them anymore. They all start going to school, start reading, doing all that they need to do. So what I tell the American people is before we start complaining a lot about this country, we need to look at other country. And the problem that we have, Lacy, is that people we read about it is not the same thing as living it and seeing it, right?
Right,
But our
right.
children do not see how people survive in other country and how good they have it. And they're complaining about, oh, I don't want to work at McDonald's. Lacey, I actually work at McDonald's. I'm telling everyone that's listening, okay? I started out working at McDonald's when I was 15 years old. All they could do is I sweep the floor and I take care of the trash. That's how I started my career. I worked at McDonald's and I was a cleaner out there. And then eventually became, I worked on the cashier. And then I started managing the money, started ordering everything. Eventually I became a manager of McDonald's before I went to college. So
Yeah.
I tell all the people that work at McDonald's, don't give up. And before you scream a lot, hey, get on a plane, go out to a third world country, see it for yourself, and then come back. I think you're gonna thank Lucky Star that you live in America, the most powerful and greatest nation on earth.
Well, one thing I say to people, we don't talk much about work anymore, but I'm just glad that that same type of work ethic was instilled in us growing up. In
Yep.
fact, I read this week a headline. I think 4.5 million people quit their jobs. I'm like,
You
yeah,
know, yeah. But for the people that are not listening, that are thinking about not working, you know, we are hurting our country. Okay, our country does not. Among people have a say, money does not grow on trees. Yes, we can take out more money, we can make more, print out more money, but it's going to hurt all of us in the long run. It's a loan. And so the more, I know JF Kennedy said it the best. Ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country. There's a lot in that those two simple statements, right?
right,
We need to ask what we need to do to make America great. That's one of the things that I want to spread to this country is remember how great this country is. You need to do your part to maintain our greatness in the world. And we're
right,
slipping. We
right,
are. And then we need to remind everyone to do their part.
right,
Don't take things for granted. Appreciate everything that we have in this country.
right,
And if you don't believe that, look around, go to other places around the world, and then compare that to what we have in this country. We need to be appreciative, and we should never take anything for free. We need to work for it. You feel much better. I tell
right.
you, I mean, I learned this from raising 4 children, right?
Uh-huh.
Okay, so if I just give them anything without them earning it, they don't appreciate it, Lacy. You
Right,
buy them a nice toy, okay?
right,
They didn't mean it. But if you make your child do chore in the house and earn that money, and then you tell that child, go spend that money on the toy, you know what he said? Or they tell me, I don't want that toy. I want to keep my money. See? And when they
right,
buy it, they appreciate it more. And it's human nature to
right,
appreciate. And we need to tell this to all the people that are not willing to contribute to say, you're going to feel much better when you help your country than if you
right,
would just been given things.
right, right. Well, I have a standing offer to one of my children if they ever want to relocate and they dissatisfied. I'm gonna play that plane ticket. I'm gonna play that resettlement cost so they can go and see. and
Thank you.
compare, because as I
Yep.
just remember the first time.
Priceless. The price that
Yeah,
you
it
pay
is.
for
It
a
is.
plane to take them to go see for
Yep.
yourself, because
Yep.
we pay thousands of dollars for our children to attend colleges and university and stuff, right?
Right.
And private school. Why don't you invest a little? Make sure that your children sees the world, and I think that that's going to motivate to be better people, right? Make them see it. Don't talk, because there's too much talking these days, right? Like text, Lacy, like emails, right? Who reads these emails, right? After a
Hmm.
while,
Hmm.
nobody reads them. I want to see a real person. I want to see a
Right.
real thing and not just talk and read about it,
Right.
or write about
Right. Right. Well, that's good input, and we'll talk some more. We'll have to bring you on and talk a little bit more about the Hmong as business people. I've been to the Hmong Mall over in St. Paul. I don't know whether you have any more malls around the Twin City areas. But hey, and speaking of the Twin City areas, I think I read somewhere an estimate of the Hmong population here of about 60,000 people, I thought. And I'm assuming that we have the largest Hmong population in the country, the state. Um, and so I just wanted to get that out. So, Shia, we are regretfully
it.
running up on our closing time here. And this has been very, very delightful. And I hope our audience, we piqued your interest enough to go out and read about history. And in fact, I tell everyone, history is, as far as I'm concerned, it's the king of all subjects.
Mhm.
And Go out and read up on the Vietnam War. Someone sent me some literature on fascism, and as if I've never heard of fascism. I don't know why they said this to me. But I told them my response was, "Look, I've studied every war that the United States have ever been involved in. I've studied it in detail, so I'm pretty much familiar with Mussolini and fascism and all that stuff. What it meant. Where I'm getting to is that I would encourage most Americans to go out and do that, especially do some research on the Vietnam War, because those who don't know history are doomed to repeat it. And
Yes.
in watching a lot of stuff that was going on in Afghanistan, they have us been around long enough to remember how we got out of Vietnam, and a lot of the same type of issue, but not just as bad. And if you're like me, uh, just about I was born during the Korean War, and I can't remember a time except for the last 4 years when we weren't involved in some type of war and skirmish. So we really need to understand that and that whole history and start connecting some dots there. Uh, okay, so let's do this. I like Shia always to have our guests in on some words of encouragement and to share with our audience maybe a perspective, attitude, or action, or whatever tenacity that enable you to overcome a lot of challenges in your life and to keep this positive attitude, because a lot of it's just attitude. I mean, and in my experience, we all face some of the basic same things in life, except however you want to define. Successful people tend to react to them differently. And so, why don't you share with our audience, and then on this note, some positive comments and some of the things about Sia Lo that help you overcome your circumstances
Yeah.
and achieve the way you have achieved.
Right. Well, Lacy, thanks again, and it's an honor for me to be on your show. Hopefully, what I share would help the listener a little bit, and they would know things a little bit more than before their interaction with me. The message I want to share with everyone is that we live in the greatest country on earth. I know if and buts about it. Um, Everyone around the world would want to come here, and so we're already living in the greatest country on earth, and we must not forget that freedom is not free, and that to be number one, you must always continue to work like every athlete that wants to be number one. We have to be very best at all time. And so if we forget that we're not going to be number one, and it's good to be number one, to do your very best. And so if an American works hard and we are the number one in the world, then we need to remember that. but also to remember that me being number one, um, as the United States as the most powerful nation on earth, the world judge us not by our military might, how how big of a bomb we can create, and how many jets we have, and how many planes, and how we can um, take out anyone in this world. That's not how the world judge America. The world judge America by how we take care of the least among us. And that remember that how the greater you are, the more you must remember to make sure that you take care of those that cannot take care themselves, because that shows the world who we are as American, and as a Christian, that the world will know that we are Christian by our love for each other. The Hmong community is here. We want to be your friends. We want to be your family. We want to learn from you, and we hope what we have, you can learn from us. And that together, we're going to build a better future, a better America, and a better world. And that's the message I want to leave that our listener is that um, we are here, and we bear no hard feelings for the United States leaving us to die in the jungle, and America left us. That's something that America must learn to be better, and I think that America will learn that lesson. But we are here. I always say, sometimes God give us um, uh, a rain, and sometimes He give us a dirt, and that together, we make mud, right?
Hmm.
But out of the mud, we will build clay. We will build homes, and we will build bridges with mud, and we will create a better tomorrow. And that's what I hope that all the Americans that are listening would do, is that together with rain and dirt and mud, we're gonna make a clay. We're gonna make a pottery of what has been given us. And so, Lacy, thank you for having me on. I'm happy to share what I've learned, and how I can contribute. So, thank you for listening.
Well, thank you for being on, Shia, and thank you for you and your Hmong community for all the contribution you made, especially here in the Twin Cities. And like I said, I just love the culture and everything, all the people I've met. And I'm gonna let it end on all those great words that you just said, and say hopefully we'll get you back on. We'll talk about working together, the Hmong and our community to establish businesses, and we already doing some of that talk there. So thank you very much, and looking forward to seeing you and the council and everyone again. And I really appreciate it, Shia. Keep up the great work, man, and keep up the positive attitude and spirit, and let's go out here and make things happen. So thank you very much. Have a great evening. Nice way to get the New Year's off to a good start. So thank you very much.
Lucy, thank you, and
Okay,
good
bye
night to
bye.
everyone. Okay,
Yeah,
bye
good
bye.
night to everyone. Thanks, Shia. Okay, so once again, thanks everyone for listening in. Remember to go out to lacyjohnson.com, subscribe, click the bell for notification, donate to the podcast, buy stuff from the online store. We're trying to line up a lot of great guests for you this coming year, and I just really enjoy doing this for you. And once again, we would never ever take you for granted. So good night, everyone. Lacey Johnson, Bright Lights. See you next week. Thanks.